Christopher Columbus, or Cristoforo Colombo as he was actually born, is one of the most controversial historical figures there is. But what the history books leave out is that he was not the discoverer of America in 1492, and they miss details like the role he played in the decimation of native people, in addition to how he ended up being an outcast and a disgrace who was thrown in jail. Today we'll talk about how the man that never stepped foot in North America ended up being commemorated throughout the entire country. Let's get into it. In schools, we're taught that Columbus, who was Italian, wanted to try finding a direct route between Europe and Asia to help with the trade of spices and silk. Despite the fact that he had been sailing since he was a teen, nautical experts knew that he vastly underestimated the distance between the two. His idea was turned down in Portugal, England, and France before finally being accepted in Spain by King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. His first of 4 voyages happened in August of 1492, and the ships named Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria, except those weren't their real names at all. 2 months later, in October, they reached the Bahamas, but Columbus thought they were in the islands in Southeast Asia, or the Indies, so he called the people living there Indians. And really, that's where the story stops in schools, but there's so much more. Columbus started to sail around and explore the nearby islands, but the Santa Maria, which was the largest ship, sank. He left 39 men in what is present-day Haiti to start a settlement, and took a few native people and a bit of gold back with him to Spain, in addition to goods like pineapples, turkeys, parrots, and tobacco in an effort to prove that there were riches across the ocean. In exchange, he was named Admiral of the Ocean Sea and appointed Viceroy and Governor of the new lands that he might claim for Spain. That bit becomes important a little later. What's not taught is how Columbus and his men were responsible for the mass deaths of native people. Specifically, how they forced their way into settlements, slaughtering small children, old men, and pregnant women, according to a friar that lived on the islands Columbus reached. Those excluded details have allowed Columbus to become the unquestioned hero and an icon for the US. But you might be wondering, how, since Columbus never stepped foot on North American soil during the course of his 4 voyages? And why is it that we don't hear about explorers that came shortly after Columbus who actually did make it to the US, like Ponce de Leon, Alonso Alvarez de Pineda, or Giovanni de Veranzio? After the Revolutionary War, the US didn't really want to associate itself with anything remotely British, but knew that they needed a heroic symbol for their new independent nation. Columbus fit the bill quite nicely since they felt that he represented freedom. He was a guy that turned his back on the old world and sailed in the name of a monarch, and then got treated very badly by that monarch. Oh, did I forget that part? Okay, let me catch you up. So we only spoke about one of Columbus's journeys, but between his 3rd and 4th, Columbus and his brothers, he took his brothers with him. Anyway, they all got arrested and imprisoned for mismanagement of their governance and returned to Spain. And I know you might be thinking that justice had been served, but no. They were only in jail for 6 weeks before being released and having their wealth restored and managing to get financing for a 4th voyage. So yeah, Americans decided after everything that he had been through that he would make the perfect icon, and there was resonance there at a time that Americans felt that they had been treated very badly by King George III. We really took the icon thing to an extreme though, because whether you realize it or not, this dude is all over America. There are about 150 statues of him across the US. More than 50 cities, counties, and towns bear his name. There are streets and avenues named in his likeness, and even an entire portion of a freeway that spans 8 states has been used to commemorate him. And let's not even get into the things that have Columbia in their name. Okay, yeah, no, we're gonna get into it. Columbia is the female personification of the United States. The name originated from Christopher Columbus and is meant to signify freedom and the pursuit of liberty. The name probably appears in more places than you realize, like in the name of the nation's capital, District of Columbia, to the Columbia River, and Columbia University. And let's not forget the space shuttle, the sportswear brand, the naval ship, and the movie studio, which produced titles like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, A Few Good Men, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, and the Emoji Movie. And I'll just go ahead and say that I do not get, nor do I support the admiration that we have for Columbus. Some argue that his voyage was an inspiration to struggling people all across Europe, symbolizing freedom and new beginnings, but it's important to remember that all of that was built on the backs of native people who were nearly completely wiped out, and whose descendants to this day still suffer from poverty and discrimination. He tortured and mutilated natives who didn't bring him enough gold, and sold girls as young as 9 into to sexual slavery, and none of those things sound like something to aspire to. Others will argue that we need to keep celebrating him because that's the way that we've done it and it's tradition, and that people need their heroes and founding myths. But again, what is it that we're actually celebrating here? The way that we choose to keep traditions alive says a lot about our present day values. We should tear down statues of our oppressors, and I don't only mean Columbus here, and erect ones of those who actually fought. Why is it that we choose to remember historical events through the lens of those that cause harm over those who stood up for their rights, or those that lost their lives in the struggle for such rights? Columbus Day celebrates a fictionalized and sanitized version of colonialism, whitewashing generations of brutality that many Europeans brought to these shores. It is impossible to make a hero out of a man that caused so much suffering.